Imagine a world where Stellantis is collapsing. It's not a huge stretch. All you need is maybe the elements of a global financial crisis, decreasing sales, and suddenly Stellantis is in a ton of trouble. So let's do a little thought experiment today. Imagine Stellantis is collapsing. They're going bankrupt. There's no way to save the company, and the brands have to all be sold off. Who would buy them? What would happen to the 14 brands within Stellantis? Well, that's what I'm going to talk through today with you. Welcome back to All Cars Reacts to whatever the heck I think of today, which is what would happen to these 14 brands under Stellantis. I have come up with a list here, but this is going to work if you play along with me, and let me know in the comments below what you would do, what you think would happen to these individual brands. I'm trying to sprinkle in a little bit of humor here while I'm at it. But I want to start off by saying a couple of things. First off is I'm not going to address Leapmotor. They have a joint partnership on that. And the second thing is when I talk about other companies that are going to be interested in brands, I'm not trying to break this down and say, could they actually afford it? I'm not trying to talk about that. I'm just talking about where I think some things fit in, and without getting into the politics all behind it either. So let's start with, first off, what do I think would be closed down? I think that DS, Lancia, Abarth, and Chrysler would all be closed down. I think that Abarth and DS could be resurrected in the future under their individual brands, much like DS was a level of one at one point. But right now, with what's happened since Daimler Chrysler, Fiat Chrysler, and now Stellantis, Chrysler as a corporation honestly has nothing to offer anybody. They have a minivan and nothing else, and they've destroyed over 20 or 30 years the name recognition of Chrysler as that semi-premium luxury brand. I don't think there's anything there to save, and I don't see anyone that would be interested in the Chrysler name and what they could bring. It doesn't bring a platform, it doesn't bring engines, and it doesn't bring dealerships for somebody looking to enter the US market. And it's not a step up for anybody. So I see that being closed down. So that leaves the brands, about 10 of them, of what's going to happen to them. Well, I think Peugeot and Citroën are going to be nationalized by the French government, even temporarily, effectively recreating PSA. Of course, if this happens, the French workers will go on strike. They won't actually have any demands. They just like to strike and be out on the street somewhere. I think Fiat would get nationalized by the Italian government as well, but they would immediately be getting a ton of interest from Chinese companies looking to break into Western Europe and Eastern European markets by buying another brand, not just spreading themselves over there. Vauxhall and Opel, I believe they would be bought by Tata. And this one makes a lot of sense to me. You've got these two mid-priced, midstream level brands in Europe that have got name recognition, and it fits into Tata's portfolio of being underneath Volvo in terms of price, complementing Land Rover and Jaguar, which is of course going up market. I think that this would make a lot of sense, but it would make a lot of sense in the market in terms of that hitting the middle level, having a competitor directly against Volkswagen, for example, or Seat. But I think if this happened, Tata would immediately announce plant closures and layoffs, and also possibly make a move to all electric, just like they've been doing with Volvo and with Jag. I believe Maserati simply would be bought by Ferrari. I don't think there's anything more to say about that one. And Alfa would be bought by, wait for it, Mazda. Now bear with me here on a second. Mazda has wanted a luxury brand since the late 80s, early 90s, when they were going to come out with the Amati brand. Now, unfortunately, the Japanese financial crisis happened. Mazda had to stop that. They're the smallest manufacturer, but they can't expand into another luxury brand. And in Europe, Lexus and Infiniti and Acura really haven't taken off. But what if you bought Alfa? All of a sudden, you get some legitimate luxury cars that certainly could be benefited with some Japanese reliability, and you slot in as an instant competitor to BMW, Audi, and Mercedes. I think this one makes a lot of sense, and I think it makes a ton of sense that Mazda would be the company that would kind of swing for it and be able to wipe away the embarrassment that they won't even talk about the Amati brand and how they had to cancel it back in the early 90s. Next would be Ram, the Ram trucks. And this one I feel most strongly about and most clear pictured about. Ram would be bought by Nissan. Now, this is why I said at the beginning, I'm not going to talk about whether a company could actually afford it, could swing it at that individual moment. But Nissan wanted to do what Toyota was doing, which was enter the full-size truck market. They make the Frontier, which is pretty decent, but their Titan never got any traction, and they had to cancel it. Well, they buy Ram. All of a sudden, they've got a complete lineup of fully competitive 1500, 2500, 3500 series trucks and vans. This makes all the sense in the world, and they could keep it as a separate brand because Ram has already been established as a separate truck brand. All they would have to do is either move the Frontier over or make another version of the Frontier, and they could call it the Ram 1000 or something like that, the Ram Rampage. Next, Jeep. Now, this is the crown jewel of Stellantis right now. GM has long coveted the Jeep brand, and I think that in this situation where Stellantis is breaking apart, that a lot of companies would be interested in Jeep. They have a worldwide name recognition. In spite of that, well, I think Ford, Hyundai, Toyota, and multiple Chinese brands like SAIC would be interested in it. I do think government interference would prevent Chinese brand from owning it, or a foreign brand again from owning it, and that GM's desire they would pay anything to own Jeep. And so for better or worse, Jeep would once again be an American brand, unfortunately under General Motors' tender loving care. And we only have to look at, well, Saab to see how that goes. And finally, we get to Dodge. I don't see Dodge being canceled. I think they've got a little bit too much name recognition and a little too much sales in the United States, but I don't see them collecting a lot of interest. No company, foreign or domestic, would really be interested with a limited lineup of performance-oriented machines, some EVs out there, and one poor-selling SUV. It doesn't slot in well with General Motors, with, say, Chevy or Ford, with the Ford brand. Where do you put Dodge in there when you can take those other ones and just make them more powerful? So I actually see a situation where another EV company pops up. They combine with a special purpose entity to fund themselves, and they buy it, intending on turning Dodge into performance EV SUVs. Yes, I said it. Now, their first product could be the new Durango, and because so many startup EV manufacturers feel the need to do something different, I think they could turn the Durango into a multi-purpose forward control EV van. They could follow that up with the Dodge Spirit, a small SUV that looks a little bit like a Jeep Patriot, but with no gauges, right? Just a heads-up display and a trackpad on the dashboard. In spite of their desire and their statements to revolutionize mobility, the company ends up going bankrupt about 2 years later, and Dodge is once again available for somebody to come pick up. And so this is just, in conclusion, one scenario I see playing out, and hopefully you picked up a little dash of humor in there from me as well. Of course, I don't think any of this is likely to happen, but realistically, I do see Stellantis having to pretty seriously restructure and cut or sell off or roll brands back into their parent, like DS with Citroën. Well, and the problem is, in thinking through this, just how far the American brands have come. Except for Jeep, Dodge and Chrysler really have nothing to offer anybody, either in terms of product or in terms of synergy. You certainly can't see, say, Honda, Mitsubishi, or Toyota being interested in Dodge, for example. I see Volkswagen could be interested in Jeep, but they're launching the Scout brand, and I don't see them wanting to take that on as at the same time as well. And so this was just a fun little experiment that I sat down to play with and decided that we could all play together. So if you come up with new ideas and you see things breaking out a little bit differently, leave me a comment below. And if you like this video, well, you're probably going to like this one too. Thanks for being here, y'all.